FELICINE CASANOVA. Original title: Madame Casanova. FELICINE CASANOVA, a storytelling about a revolutionary Jacobin woman and her close bond with the later French Emperor Napoleone Bonaparte. A story by Gabi von Schoenthal. About the author: Gabi von Schoenthal, pseudonym, born as Gabriele Philipp, and got married under the name Gabriele Frischauer, born September 12, 1926 in Vienna, died November 20, 2002 in Vienna, was an Austrian actress and writer. About the painting: in the absence of a contemporary image, Dutch painter and illustrator Leen Spierenburg, living from 1922 to 1971, painted this realistic portrait of FELICINE CASANOVA using accurate, reliable historical data. Chapter 1. I wasn't born. I wasn't dead. I had never existed. The page with my name had disappeared from the birth register of the small church where I was baptized. I flipped through from front to back. They were all there, neatly inscribed in elegant letters. Antonio Sebastiano Casanova. That was my father. Then my mother. Marianne Maria, born as Malaspina. My brother Antonio, and my sister Vanina. Only I was missing. The page that should have read: Felicine Elisa Maria Casanova, born May 25, 1776, had been torn out. Who had destroyed the written proof of my existence in my hometown of Corte? Had my brother Antonio, after Napoleon I Bonaparte conferred upon him the title of Duke, erased the family's disgrace? Was that Bonaparte's revenge? It was a strange feeling not to exist. I felt an uncontrollable need to see myself as living proof that I existed. I looked around the austere sacristy, but I didn't see a mirror anywhere. I pulled out my gold pocket mirror from my reticle. It was a gift from the Russian Tsar, Alexander I Pavlovich, a precious proof of my existence. In a mirror, the frame of which was studded with rubies and brilliants, I looked at my face, the large, still yearning eyes, the straight, perhaps a little too short nose, the full lips, and the small ears, who had excelled hearing and were therefore allowed to wear the famous pearls of Charles Maurice de Talleyrand Périgord, first Prince of Benevento and the Prince of Talleyrand. That was my face, which the whole world knew, and which was loved and feared in London, Vienna, St. Petersburg, and now also in Paris. People could see a lot about me, and they did, but no one could say that I didn't exist. I had become wealthy, influential, and powerful on my own, and with a lot of ingenuity. I had married a lord and was now the most honorable Lady Saint Elme, and at the same time the scandalous, mysterious Madame Casanova. I had lived countless lives. I had loved and hated, been silent and spoken when I felt necessary, but I had never forgotten anything. It was an unbearable thought for me to be silenced and forgotten. I called the sexton and ordered him to present me to the priest. I am not used to waiting, I added. He looked at me shyly. After I pressed a gold piece into his hand, he immediately disappeared. The pastor was very old. He had no teeth left in his mouth, and he had pure white hair. I recognized him immediately. It was Abbe Nardi. He had baptized me. He had recorded my birth in the thick book. For the small sins I had committed as a child, he had often given me absolution. I never confessed my major childhood sins to him. He had to remember me. I asked him point blank about Felicine Casanova. For a moment there was a barely perceptible twitch in his eyes. Then the abbe shook his head and said, "You must be mistaken, madame. I know the Casanova family." And with some determination in his voice, he added, "There is no Felicine." I stood before him in the flesh, and he, who had often blessed me, had the insolence to tell me that they had never existed. Was he already so old that he no longer knew what he was saying, or was the worldly power that forced him to deny me stronger than the divine commandment, "Thou shalt not lie"? My conversation with the abbe ended before it had properly begun. He gave me his blessing. There was no point in arguing with him. I bowed my head. In the dusty hot square in front of the church, Igor stood waiting in his richly embroidered purple livery of the Saint Elme family. He carried Minouche in his arms, as if she were a child, and caressed her long, silky ears. Igor looked at me, smiling cheerfully. I walked towards him, my silk dress dragging on the dry, worn stones. I felt dizzy when I felt the oppressive heat. "My lady looks pale." Igor handed me Minouche, who was beside herself to see me again. "My lady needs to rest." How could I rest when I was so restless inside? There was not a soul to be seen in Olmenlaan. The shutters of the narrow, high houses of the Corso were closed, as if everything hostile had to be shut out. Where should I start looking? I had come back to regain my youth, to reawaken long gone memories. I had set out to undertake a journey into the past, but until then there was no one to help me. I went to visit Major Petruccio Capello. He was a son of the old major with whom my father had done business. They had never become friends, and Mitty turned out to have a better memory than friendship. Igor disturbed Petruchio in his afternoon nap when he announced my visit in a loud, impressive voice, since it was a distinguished foreign visitor. Capello ended his siesta without protesting, fastened his suspenders, and put on his dark jacket. "I am at your disposal, my lady," he said, bowing respectfully to me. He let me sit on the creaking sofa in his office. I sat down. Even as a child, I had sat there when my father visited. The stuffing was still bulging out of the half-decayed brown cushions. The ink in the pot on the old desk was still dried up. Flies were still buzzing against the closed shutters. "How can I help you?" Petruchio asked, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. I inquired about the Casanova family. Capello made a hypocritical, sad face. "All dead," he said. "Antonio Sebastiano Casanova, dead. Mariana Casanova, dead. All the children are also dead, except the son, Antonio, Duke of Padua." He mentioned my brother's title with a certain reverence, and even bowed while seated. "Perhaps His Grace resides on the mainland." He raised his shoulders. "Maybe in Italy, maybe in France." Unfortunately, he did not know any further details about the Duke. Neither should I thought to myself, as he explained in detail that the Casanova family home was uninhabited and gradually falling into disrepair. The regret in his words did not match the satisfaction on his face. I also asked Capello if he knew anything about me. He raised his hands defensively. "I don't know anything about the Felicine Casanova. I've never heard of her. During the time I have held this office, her name has never been mentioned here. Please contact Abbe Nardi. He has been in Corte for 50 years and knows everyone in his parish. He is the only one who can answer your questions." That was the anathema applied to Corsica, a conspiracy of all against the few they had expelled. If I asked anyone, the innkeeper, the grocer, or the blacksmith, they would all pretend they knew nothing and point me to the pastor who ruled their conscience, but had none himself. Outside in the hall, I heard Minouche barking. Igor's deep voice calmed her down. I stood up, irritated. Capello jumped up to hastily open the door for me. He looked at me with a quick glance. He appraised my clothes, my jewelry, the way I was made up, and the smell of my perfume. And I could tell it didn't meet his approval. I could tell by his look that he knew who I was, but neither money nor good or bad words would be able to open his convulsively closed mouth. He was afraid, still afraid of Napoleon